Going. All right, should be live now. Hello, YouTube. Nice to have you all here. Let me hit record. All right, hello, everybody. I'm very excited for my very first roundtable on what's going to be a monthly series called The Human Race. I have some great guests on this initial episode. We're going to talk the Bible, the Book of Enoch, fallen angels, Nephilim, secret societies, and how the events of today have all been prophesied long ago. Everybody give a great round of applause to our special guests. We got Ark from Digging for the Truth. We have Josh and Jason Monday from Christianity and Conspiracies. We have Pastor Jim Wilhelmson from the podcast Beyond Science Fiction. And we have author of the book, The Genesis 6 Conspiracy, Gary Wayne. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us, man. It's Josh Monday. It's Josh Monday Christian and Conspiracy Podcast for everybody that's listening, so you guys know.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I'm not in the name. They don't, he doesn't have me in there yet.
No, it's because I made everything before. So, anyways, go ahead.
Hey, it doesn't matter.
Well, do you guys all want to go around, just give yourselves a brief introduction of who you are and what you do?
I guess. You want me to jump in?
Yeah, whoever wants to jump in, yeah.
All right. My name is Pastor Jim Wilhelmson. I've been an ordained minister for 46 years, and I've investigated UFOs, phenomena, and aliens for the last 25 years. I wrote my book, Beyond Science Fiction, in 1996 was the first issue. For the last 26 years, I've lived in Roswell, New Mexico, became a resident. I've been a first responder to all of the major UFO sightings, mass sightings, and situations all throughout the United States. After living 4 years in Roswell, I got to pretty much know who's who from everything within the UFO community. I was once an investigator, field investigator, and researcher for Mutual UFO Network as an investigator. I was probably one of the first as an ordained minister to address alien abduction, and I now provide and have provided termination of alien abductions, and I've done counseling for over 25 years doing this.
Oh, wow. Gary, do you want to hop in and introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Nice to meet everybody that's out there and everybody on the council, and so happy to be here. My name is Gary Wayne. I'm author of The Genesis 6 Conspiracy, How Secret Societies and the Descendants of Giants Plan to Enslave Humankind. I'm also a Christian contrarian. So for people who aren't familiar with what that term is think of it like a Berean from a scriptural perspective. Is I like to verify everything. I don't necessarily take what anybody says at face value or what somebody says something said or what they saw. I like to verify things myself, and I approach my research and I approach scripture in exactly the same way. I tend to connect dots for people. Dots that they haven't thought about connecting before. I've spent about 20 years of research in the Bible, 10 years in writing the book. I've got another sequel on the go and another prophecy book on the go at the same time. So I stay very busy in the podcast and radio market. I do 3 to 4 interviews a week. So I stay very busy trying to present information in ways that people haven't really seen it before, and raise a little bit of curiosity that I think we need to have more of.
Absolutely. That is wonderful. Jason, do you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Jason Monday. I'm a Christian. I don't have such a colorful, I've read any books, but I've studied a lot of stuff in the Bible, and recently been studying it to where I read I want to see what the text says, see what the underlying message is in the text, and then see how the text applies to my life, or how I apply it to everything else that's going on in the world right now. So that's what I've been doing hardcore, and it's been a colorful and it's been a long and very good lesson and good walk with God I've been going right now. So lately, but this thing that we're tackling right now is an issue that is not taught very much. So, and when people can learn it, they actually understand it. And actually, like you said, do your own research. Just don't take it at face value, because it's not what we say. It's not what Gary Wayne says or Josh Monday or whatever Jim says, or it's not what we say. It's you gotta it's what we've looked at and studied, and I'm pretty sure we're all in the same agreements on a lot of this stuff. And I feel like right now we're having church if we're going to be doing that. If we're all just talking about the same subject, and we're all in agreement, this is and the Holy Spirit's around, and we're all in good form right now. I really appreciate having me on, and yeah, that's my introduction. And I don't know if you want to go to anybody else, but thanks for having me on. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
absolutely. Josh, do you want to hop in now too?
Sure. My name is Josh Monday. I'm a host, and then my brother's my co-host of Josh Monday Christian and Conspiracy Podcast. I'm also a Christian rapper. So I got some music out. I'm an Army veteran, just like Jim as well. He's a veteran. I don't know if Gary is or not, but we just like to dig for the truth. We take conspiracies. We try to see how much it relates to the Bible as much as possible. We always keep it Christ-centered as much as possible. And then let's say that in some way the conspiracy does not match with the Bible, we'll at least spit verses so that people that are, we want to get the conspiracy people to at least hear the word of God, because we're all searching for the truth, but the truth is on your nightstand. It's called the Holy Bible. Okay, guys, Jesus is the truth. God is the truth. And that's what everybody should be really looking up. But yeah, next is Ark, and we love Ark, man. And thank you for having us on the show, guys. Seriously, it's awesome.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Exactly what you're saying, the truth right there. And Ark, go ahead. Why don't you introduce yourself?
All right. Yeah, happy to be here. My name's Ark with Destiny Lab, and also Digging for the Truth with Ark and Neo, which is a podcast I do with my brother. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it tonight, but I've been investigating all these similar types of things, and like Gary was saying, sort of connecting the dots since the mid 90s, originally starting making Christian hip hop music, exposing the lie of evolution, and then got into exposing the alien deception and the Nephilim, as well as secret societies, the occult, as well as transhumanism, and then how all these things sort of connect. The other thing that I really talk about and expose is the original sin, the lie of the original sin, and the lie when the serpent told Eve, if you eat of this fruit, ye shall be as gods, and how this is a repetitive pattern, not only in pretty much every secret society and every cult that has ever been out there, but also every New Age movement. All these ideas, that's the one connecting foundation that we can see repeated over and over and over again. And I believe that's a really important thing to teach in church and, to fellow believers and truth seekers. So that's one of the things that I really think is important to talk about. But yeah, just happy to be here tonight and talk about all these things. And it's a blessing.
Yeah, well, I want to thank you all for coming on. So I'll introduce myself a little bit for anyone who's unfamiliar with me. My name's Todd Armstrong. I have gone through the gamut of running away from God, actively rebelling, and now becoming a conspiracy theorist and a spiritual person, and then going from there and knowing Jesus Christ and learning the Bible and learning the truth. As Josh was saying, we all are searching for the truth, and then it's so simple, but it's so simple that this world is so complex that we think that it can't be that simple. But the more I study the conspiracies, the more I study the Bible and listen to all of you gentlemen, I listen to your guys' music, I listen to your podcast, I read your books. All of you have inspired me so much and have led me to closest to the truth than anything that I've discovered. And it's also, I get things in meditation, and everything that I look at, everything lines up with the fallen angels, the Nephilim, and secret societies. And when I started reading the Book of Enoch, that's what really put it over the top for me. It was describing how the fallen angels, they made these oaths and they did these things and they taught these different things and they had these mystery schools. And that is exactly what secret societies are. And then I look at exactly why no one's going down for what they're doing. And it's because, they made an oath way back when in the 7th generation from Adam, or during that time, that we're never going to turn on each other. That's how we stay at the top. And now we're all here to talk about all this, and I'm so glad. First thing I want to talk about is who are the fallen angels? Gary, do you want to start a little bit about who are the fallen angels, where they come from, that type of thing?
Yeah, it's one of those foundational questions that whether or not we're talking about Nephilim and secret societies, or we're talking about understanding anything in the Bible, and particularly prophecy, we need to understand who the angels are and the fallen angels. So the angels that are fallen probably are best understood in Revelation 12 for an end time prophecy, where by that time a full third of fallen angels will have rebelled and will be warring with the loyal angels in heaven led by Michael. So these are many orders of angels, and it's not just the watchers, and the watchers are made up of that rebelled, and there's loyal watchers as well. They're made up of the archangels, they're made up of the Ophanim, they're made up of the cherubim, and they're made up of the seraphim. And there are many other orders as well, whether or not it's dunamis, exousia, and on and on and on with this army. Understand that the angels are a host, and that's the Hebrew word saba, which means army. And so you're going to have rank and hierarchy, just as you do on the loyal side. So the fallen angels that we tend to see that are talked about in a fallen angel nature as a group are talked about in Revelation 12. They're also talked about as the ones who come out of the abyss in Revelation 9 in the end time, who are the worst of the fallen angels, and who are the ones who were impassioned and created giants, the Nephilim, before the flood, and perhaps again after the flood, as the Rephaim show up after the flood as post-Diluvian giants. And we also see the sons of God in Genesis 6, which is the same sort of order of angels as you might find in Job 1:6 and 2:1 and 38:4-7 as the sons of God. And in Job 38, the sons of God are there with the stars, who were there at creation. So we know they're fallen angels, and they're talked about as watchers in the Book of Enoch. And typically the watchers are the sons of God and the holy ones, and are very much in the Book of Enoch also associated with the seraphim. And so it's the seraphim that tend to be the ones who likely were the most predominant group on the first incursion before the flood, but there was probably several incursions before the flood. And so these would also be understood as the angels who are the fallen ones, and that comes from a root word for Nephil, which is the singular for the male plural Nephilim. So Nephil, I am is the male plural, just as a seraphim, you get the I am with a plural, and it can be understood as ones. So seraphim would be fiery serpent ones, the dragon type of angels. And the root word is naphal. Instead of with a YL, it's an AL, and that means to fall or to prostrate. And so you could call the fallen ones the Nephilim because they're the fallen ones, just as they could also be the Shamayim. They are the ones of heaven. Just as Shama is the word for heaven, the plural is Shamayim, and it can be used for angels and stars, and it can also be used just for the planetary system in the universe. So you have to understand the application. That's sort of a quick summary from my perspective as to who the fallen angels are. And within that hierarchy, they're led by Satan, who is the one who fell from heaven in Isaiah 14. And is confirmed as so by Jesus in Luke 10:8 as seeing Satan fallen from heaven. And in that translation, and I don't want to go too far down a rabbit hole, I have to share the screen here. I'm used to doing shows by myself. That is the Hebrew one. Ben Shakar is the son of the morning, as people most would understand that, but it's Hail El is the Hebrew word, H-E-Y-L-E-L, and that could be, and very likely is, one of the names and the titles for Satan before he fell.
Wow, that is incredibly interesting. And anybody, if you guys want to jump in and add anything on, or at any time, feel free to.
Yeah, I was going to say after the after he's talking about the Rephaim after that, but there's also tribes that Joshua didn't eliminate after the flood I'm trying to, I think they were I think they were called the same with the the Samsumim, the Emim and I think the Horim, I think they're called. I think that's what it's called. I'm trying to,
That's some of them. That is some of them, yes.
Rephaim. They're all tribes that were in that same area. And if you look at it today, the same area that Joshua didn't conquer still have same problems that are going on right now that are surrounding Israel right now. Those same areas that Joshua did not conquer and it was genocide in the Bible. If you look at it, it says wipe out every man, child, and woman in that tribe. Don't compromise this, and he did, and that's how you get. They're still scattered out throughout this world. Maybe that bloodline that Satan tried to taint back then is still roaming around today. Who knows? I feel like that's one thing I like to tackle too, because I feel like that bloodline never went away, so it's still out there, still going on, still rampant through society. So that's why God only chose 8 people in Enoch to survive that. Because his bloodline wasn't tainted. That's 8 people out of how many people were out there back then during those times? Probably billions of people, probably, if you would think about it, that there was a lot of people on the planet probably back then. And then he going on through after the flood, you get Nimrod and you get all those, there's probably another tainted bloodline that happened through them, because Nimrod was also a direct descendant of Noah, but he was also a man of renown, right? He was just like the mighty men back then. He was a hunter. He was a great. You don't hear of him really through history, but through the Bible you hear of him. So,
and when you're talking about different bloodlines, what that brings my mind to is how Gary said there were different orders of angels that all came down. I think there were several different bloodlines from each of these different orders of angels that came down. They all had their own separate bloodlines. And that maybe at some point it got to where there were so very little that they started mixing together. And that's how we have the 13 families now, or allegedly the 25 families, the 12 that are hidden away. But I think that there's so many different families to begin with, because there were all the different orders that mixed their DNA with humans.
Well,
I think I heard.
Sorry, man.
I heard Gary talking about that it could be also today, but yeah, Jesus says that. He says in Matthew 24:37, but as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming the Son of Man be. So we know that when Jesus comes back, there's also going to be, besides the sin that was going on, also, there's going to be the Nephilim bloodline here, or the Nephilim or Raphaim, however you want to put it. Also, I wanted to also make a difference, let the audience know there's a difference between a fallen angel and a demon, because I think that some people maybe believe that the fallen angels would be put in the same category as a demon, but fallen angels, they come down and they're able to, angels are able to eat, drink, and do physical activities with humans. In Genesis, angels actually grabbed the hand of Lot and took him out of Sodom and Gomorrah. There was men that wanted to sleep with the angels so they could physically see them, and they wanted to sleep with them. They lusted after them, kind of the same way that we're seeing the women lusting after these angels when they had sex with humans. Demons are like a spirit that need to inhabit a physical body, so they actually need like a channel to inhabit a physical body. So I just want to make sure your audience knows that there's a difference between a fallen angel and a demon. Gary, would you agree with that, or Jim, or Ark?
No, absolutely. Yes. I would agree, but it's too much right now to be able to address everything, but I'm probably the David Icke of everybody that is here, as far as I'm outside of the box, or the outside of the box. I'm the black sheep of the black sheep researchers. And some of this I base on just pure empirical evidence. The fact that we have fossils of pre-flood giants that are different from the post-flood giants. Why is there a difference? I think there's a lot of the explanation is in the dialogue between verses or chapters 24 all the way up to 42. And in 41, we find a key. This is what covers Leviathan. It covers a lot of rhetorical statements that God was making to Job, and it actually was talking and describing cosmology. And encrypted in many of those chapters of Job, it is a matter of perception. Now, who is Leviathan? We've been told by archaeologists and scientists and biblical theologians that Leviathan was a hippopotamus, it was a plesiosaur, it was a crocodile, a mythical sea creature like Beanie and Cecil. So we got all these different ideas of perceptions, but in the 41st, last verse in the 41st chapter sums up a true identity of what we need to be looking at and the proper perspective of what we need to be seeing things at. And it says that he is the father of the children of pride. Now he's using a noun that's in a not in a first person singular, but it's in a plural form, meaning the entire embodiment of an alliance of people from the one who is the children of the people of he is the chief of the people of pride. Who can it be? Who is the leader of the people of pride?
Satan.
Satan. So we're looking at a total body of unbelievers, of rebels against God, both human and non-human. Now we go back all the way through all the scriptures, and there is a scenario being played out there, encrypted in the Hebrew, that describes the Antarctic, why it's melting. It describes the inner earth with all the cosmology to support and prove the inner earth, and how it's directly connected to who we are dealing with as far as entities. I find it very interesting that, and this is the all of the 30-foot giants before the flood that are recorded as fossils, they're all fossilized. There's no mummies, there's no bleached bones. They're all fossilized remains, which indicates, that kind of proves that the mineral replacement of everything, rapidly, organic material being rapidly buried, suggests a worldwide flood. And these are post-flood. You don't see anything other than fossilized bodies of these huge 30-foot giants. And we haven't actually got an entire complete skeleton, but we've had enough pieces and parts to know that the average height was about 30 foot. There's other details that aren't mentioned because race is kind of a touchy, sensitive thing anymore. I've been called a racist for telling the truth. One of the ideas that sons of God came to the daughters of men, the offspring produced giants. And there's a problem with that because in the record fossils that we find, there's no adolescent giants, there's no baby giants, there's no male giants, female giants. All of the post-flood giants are full adult males and they're Caucasian. There's no other color, no other genetic line except the Caucasian race. They're a full contingency of male, full adult males. There's a reason why, and it's connected to Cain and Abel and what really happened in the Garden of Eden, and the fact that after Cain killed Abel, his brother cried from the blood from the ground for justice, that Abel was afraid he would be caught and seized upon and killed for what he did, being a murderer. It said that this event happened in the process of time. The process of time in the Hebrew means in the last days, not our last days, but last days before the flood. When we find out that Cain's sentence was to be hidden in the ground from the face of the earth and the face of God for his own protection, he was sentenced to wander in the land of Nod, east of Eden, which biblically can be proven as inside the earth. He was sentenced to wander as a vagabond in the land of Nod, inside the earth. Jesus, when he died, first didn't ascend into heaven, he descended into the inner earth. He first went 3 days in the upper chamber, and then after he rose again after that, he went to the lower chamber in hell and made an open show humiliation, like because of the defeat and death and resurrection of his own. And Peter wrote and said that who is this that ascended? He first descended into the bowels of the earth. He told the thief of the night, this day you should be in paradise with me. He didn't go to heaven. He didn't go anywhere other than into the upper chamber of what was called Abraham's bosom. So I said I wasn't going to get along involved in it. And here I'm starting myself to do that. So I apologize. But so what I see is that the Nephilim were the descendants of Cain, sentenced to wander inside the earth. He was of Caucasian origin. When you look at the after the flood, the the so-called patriarchs of Cain, Abel, and Seth, Seth being the patriarch of the Caucasians, you look at what they were doing and you look at what Cain's descendants did inside the earth. They were the empire builders, they were the scientists, they were the explorers, they were the ones that were totally synonymous with each other. They had the same credentials. And when you look at Blavatsky's writings, there's a surface mixed generation of this so-called Aryan race, and there's the inner chiefs who are inside the earth that are the pure, and someday they would merge together. Well, as God has his prophets and prophecies, Satan has his counterparts. So Helena Blavatsky's 2-volume book, The Secret Doctrine, lays out a perspective that is the same but opposite of our Bible. I call her the anti-Moses. And what she did was compile everything that was cutting edge in her time and compose the story of the Aryan. The seed, I say, is the seed of the serpent, and as opposed to God's seed, going back to Genesis 3rd chapter, that one would step on his foot and cause him to fall back, but then that seed would actually come and destroy the seed of the serpent by the seed of the woman. So all of this kind of ties in, because I think one thing we all see is that all of these different things are set, just parts and components of one story, paradise lost and regained. And in doing all this, when you see the visuals of a modern pre-flood of being 30 feet, now when Cain was sentenced to wander in the land, he was given a mark and a sign. The mark was some kind of supernatural empowerment. And I guess if you get to be 30 foot tall, no matter how talented the 6-foot person would be at the time, all you got to do is just take one stomp and squish him, and whatever combat, that's finished, it's done. So, that's kind of a large size. Now, inside the earth, before the flood, before the canopy broke, the mitochondrial breakdown of the human genome wasn't that much. So, people and things lived to be long and big and more than today. That's why we have 6-foot wingspan dragonflies, that once lived on the surface of the earth. But afterwards, everything diminished and went down to a normal size, including inside the earth. The same effect happened with the canopy there. You had, on the outside, you had gravity pushing out, and the inside of the earth, you have gravity pushing out this way. So there's like an equilibrium of the gravity that would allow somebody to go in when the hole at the opening at the earth in the North Pole is actually over. You could see it, you could actually go down and you could go in, and you wouldn't just go plump and fall into a big hollow void or a cavernous system into a bigger patches, but you would have a literal hollow earth with an inner sun that's pushing gravity out this way, the earth pushing it in this way, causing an equilibrium. So you're sailing through, like many books and legends, the Smoky God, even Admiral Byrd had the same kind of a situation where,
like King Kong versus Godzilla. What exactly what happened?
That movie had
Jim,
more actual physics that was so right on, more truth in that than what our scientists are telling us.
Jim, so you're going with the Seth and Cain adaptation of this, right? It doesn't sound like you're going with the fallen angels having sex with humans.
No, there was fallen angels. But
okay. I just heard you say. Yeah. I heard you say that Seth went one way and then Cain went to not. I think that you were just explaining the hollow earth part.
We call the Sethite lie. No, I don't accept that whatsoever.
Okay, no problem. I got confused. I apologize. Yeah. I was just listening to your way you're speaking. I was like, okay. Now the hollow earth thing is very interesting. Like I've listened to a lot of your podcasts about it. I had a podcast about the hollow earth. A lot of the verses in the Bible do line up really good with it. I have tons of them. Right. But yeah, I totally get where you're coming from with that. With that.
Are you any of you guys familiar with Antarctica used to be called Terra del Fuego, the land of fire? And there's a 1587 map with drawings of dinosaurs on it, and dinosaurs weren't discovered till the 1800s. And there are literal dinosaurs on there, and it was so hot that humans couldn't go there. And then you have in South America, you have Patagonia, the land of the giants.
Yep.
And they moved in, and that's right below Argentina, where the Nazis are alleged to go when they left Nazi Germany. And then we get to what Jim was saying about the Aryan race. I have come across in my research of Tartaria, I've come across this thing called the incubator babies, that they had incubators set up all over these world fairs showing all these babies. And I've been led intuitively to believe that that is the combination, exactly as Jim was saying, of the two different races of Seth and Cain's two different lines coming together, that they are completely test tube babies. And as Jim was saying, it is not a race dominant thing, but they were Caucasian in the way that you look at that. If you look at Europe is the only continent on the earth that doesn't begin with an A. Every other continent begins with an A. So it sticks out differently there. Then they all have, the empires all come from Europe. You have the Spanish Empire, the British Empire, Roman Empire, French Empire. All of them come from there because they are all the sons of the fallen, or maybe the line of Cain. I'm not too sure how that fits in, but they are definitely the sons of the fallen, and they are all white people who then went around conquering everywhere else. So,
when Joshua and Caleb failed to destroy all of the Zamzummim, the Eman, and all these other ites, the last bastion of them escaped, and they escaped into Philistia. That's the Philistines. The Philistines and Hittites have a relationship like the Canadians and the Americans. They had the same God. They had the same technology they were in the Iron Age when everybody else was still in the Bronze Age. So they had superior technology, but unique also was the fact that they didn't have a written language. Here they were highly sophisticated in technology, and they had no written language. Actually, they didn't have any written language until Heidelberg in Germany. Oh, yeah, that's the Genuines. It's interesting that the giants that escaped went into Lebanon with King Oz, and he went into the Philistines with Goliath. Now, interesting stories there. When the Ark of the Covenant was, being took by the Philistines, they mocked the Hebrews, saying that they took the God in a box and put him in with their God, the Dagon. Of course, we know the story. The first day, Dagon was fallen before the Ark of the Covenant. The second day, his head rolled off, and he's fallen before the Ark of the Covenant. They says, "You Hebrews, okay, this is getting weird. You just come over and get your God in a box and get him out of here. We don't want him any longer." But they were boasting about how the Levitical priest couldn't even touch it and died on the spot when it looked like the Ark of the Covenant was going to fall when they were marching with it. But they just went and grabbed it and took it away from them like nothing. So they were boasting of their superiority. Well, they sent Isaiah there to warn them. And it's in, I think, chapter 14, verse 36, boast not thou, O Philistia. Actually, looking at it in a modern translation, or what I call the unofficial Jim Wilhelmson translation, going back to the original Hebrew, it has quite I'm looking for a book to see if I can quote from it. Well, I should have been better prepared and had one around. I could grab one, but anyways, so I would like to be more accurate, but if you want to email me, I can give you the specific rendering of it. But basically, it's saying that there would be some future role playing between the tribe of Dan, which was the major tribe that they were warring with, being that they were the next door neighbor during this battle, the tribe of Dan and the tribe of the Philistines, that somehow there was going to be some interreaction so that the tribe of Dan would extract from the root of their genetic code a more or less shell for the serpent to hide into. Now, word picture stories sometimes can clarify a lot of theology and guesswork and everything, and Jesus always spoke with word pictures. And what's interesting there is that eventually what became the symbol for the tribe of Dan was the eagle. Guess what the symbol for the Philistines was?
The Nazi the Nazi swastika.
Swastika, exactly.
Yeah.
So basically in that text of verse, it's saying that there will come a day when the eagle and the swastika will come together. And when they come together, they will extract some genetic code for the serpent to hide in.
What about like Operation Paperclip, bro? Like when that's when the eagle and the swastika got together right there, man.
You got it exactly. You got it exactly. The Third Reich was a prophesied occult government whose official agenda was to bring back the world before the flood. and their symbols came together, and then they did all the other activity that the book of Daniel, it talks about, that he would think to change the times and seasons, the times and a doubling, halving a time and a doubling a time. That's past, present, and future. We have rumors of the Diglocka, the time travel machine. It was successful. It was very successful.
Dude, there's a lot that goes in with that, dude, with the Operation Paperclip. We just did a show on that, dude. So yeah, it's all the experiments that they're doing on people and everything, and they just got scot-free, dude. They got to come over here. They got their visas, you know, and it's different because the Russians treated them like second-class citizens, you know, and said, hey, we want to get as much information as we can out of them, and then we're going to send them back. But America brought them in. We put all these different Nazis in these high places, made them directors of companies, CEOs of big companies, aerospace companies, NASA, which you look into that, guys. I'm not going to bring it up on here, but dude, there's just some,
you know, I warned in my book 26 years ago. I said the next 2 generations of the paperclip scientists that come over to this country, it's like a Trojan horse. Their offspring is going to be major rulers and leaders in our government structure on the left and the right, on both sides of the fence. They're going to be running this country. Guess who my governess in Michigan, I call her Gretchen, the witch of the Mitch. Guess who her grandpa was?
It was Operation Paperclip. I don't know who it was, but
Gerhard Reisling. He was a paperclip scientist, and here she is, the governor of Michigan. Now you can go through Congress on the left and the right, and the majority of the people, the rhinos in the Republican Party and most of your Democrats have connections with paperclip scientists, just as I had said 26 years ago. And now we're living the reality of it. So
yeah, and now they print off so much money, they just pay everybody who wasn't on board. Now everyone's getting paid, so now they're all on board. But I want to bring it back to the fallen bit. And Josh, you were saying that they could take physical form, which is very interesting. And I've contemplated that because I've actually seen a seraphim in a meditation. I was on a psychedelic experience. It appeared to be a Chinese dragon. Then he roared at me. His whole mouth was way larger than my entire body. Then when it looked like a lion, when he was roaring at me, it closed its mouth. I could see it was a Chinese dragon. It had the claws of a bear, exactly described, and it had 7 heads, 10 horns, exactly described as the beast in Revelation. So I know that it is a astral thing, and I know that the seraphim are in that direction, but I've also come across somebody I talked to not long ago named Ed Dodge, who was telling me all about the androgynous angels, that they were both masculine and feminine in one, and that humans were making themselves transgender in order to be in service of these angels. So in some weird way, they were being the opposite of the angels, but still being above humans because they were then sexless. I'm not sure how it all worked out, but
I try to bring it back. Okay, so I know there's the Book of Enoch, which I try to go with the most historicity, which is the Holy Bible. Okay, the Book of Enoch for me, I mean, there's a lot of Gnostic. Like I think that some of it was written by Enoch because it's actually quoted in Jude. But in my personal opinion, bro, I would never be. In my opinion, not anybody else could do whatever they like, but me, I would like to go just from the Bible, you know. But Hebrews 13:1, we believe Paul wrote it. That's what I think. Who wrote it? It says you never know when you're entertaining an angel. So that's an angel. That means that when you're talking to somebody on the street, or if you are having people over, or you're talking to maybe someone that's in government, whatever, you could be talking to an angel. You never know when when someone asks you for $5 or $10 or $1 or 25 cents. You might be being tested at that moment to see your heart, right, by God. So there could be an angel. So that's one verse. And then also when I was talking to you guys about Genesis, when Sodom and Gomorrah happened, the 2 angels went into Sodom and Gomorrah, and they were looking like humans. Okay, so that's actually that's angels in human form. Also, they ate. Okay, they ate with them. They drank with them, drank water, so they could do everything that we can do. If they didn't come in human form, obviously, what like my brother always brings up on my podcast, and Ark said, they would be worshipped like they were a god. That's why they have to come in human form. So when we're talking about these fallen angels nowadays, there's a whole list of people like bloodlines that end up becoming famous. It's not like you become like Ark. Listen to Ark's album, dude. He's got like so much great music. Okay, guys, I'm not trying to toot me or Ark's horn, but what happens is these people just have maybe bloodlines of maybe, you know, some type of bloodline where they just end up becoming famous like this. They might sell their soul also, but if you guys kind of look into it, it's very interesting. But that's kind of what I like to go off of, whatever the Holy Bible says. But the Book of Enoch is, I think some of it maybe, but Enoch might have wrote some, but I think it's also contorted, and I don't like that. I don't like 80%, 20% lie, you know.
Well, you can use it, but you can only use it as like the language that was being used back then is a good way to go through and look at how they were using the language and how you could put in the Bible. So like sons of God, same thing. So the sons of God in the Bible and the sons of God in Enoch are the same name, same word. The rabbinical people actually did teach that stuff back in the day. The Sethite and the Canaanite wasn't taught until later because people didn't want to teach this stuff because it sounded kind of fairy tale-ish. But if you go through all through history, there's the Assyrians, the Incans, the Mayans, the Greeks. They all have the same kind of concept.
We're gonna talk
of humans messing with angels.
Yeah.
Right.
I think there's some good stuff in it. There's great stuff in it. I just like the history.
No. There's great stuff in it, but you have to understand
Plus
the language they were using at the time. So if you're gonna, it's a good way to go and compare your language of the Hebrew that was going on back in the day. I'm not saying
I totally get it.
A great way to use is as it's like if you're living back then, you just can go on the internet and go, okay, I'm gonna type in fault Nephilim. What does that mean? You can't do that. So you have to compare what's going on.
I get it. I get it, dude.
That's where Gary.
If you're not,
What do you think?
What's up?
That's where Gary Wayne's work is really amazing, where he follows the bloodline traits through the global elite and has some pretty convincing, evidence that the surface dwellers right now that are, trying to attain and are at the different levels, the God of this world has placed them there. This is their domain, and this is what even Jesus agreed that that Satan tempted him the 40 days. He says, bow down and worship me. I'll give you all of my kingdoms. Well, it's like, I wish Biff would come up with his cane and start hitting Satan in the head saying, McFly, what's the matter with you? I mean, this was given to him, allowed to make a mockery of his creation. And it's not even, quantum physics has pretty much said that, okay, it's nothing but a computer program. And that's all Satan has is an idea. And he's running it through as a program. And he's the programmer, but he's just tweaking and distorting what God had created. It's like God, picked up the dirt and made everything and said it was good. And Satan grabbed the dirt and started to imitate doing the same thing. And God says, hey, that's my dirt, get your own. Well, he couldn't get his own dirt. So he's got to tweak and modify what he does have. I think Gary's work showing the evidence of the traces of the global elite, how they got where they are, is from this bloodline. He's made a very convincing case in his book. That's why it's in my museum as a must-read thing, where he's made the connections for the dark side. I'm kind of trying to make in my book the connections more for the good side and our inheritance as a manifestation of the sons of God in the last days, where we have everything available to us that God has given in the way of supernatural gifts. Everything. As Satan's going to throw everything at us, God's going to give us answers now. The apocalypse means the unlifting of the veil. And basically what I say is that time and space has been manipulated. The fallen angels gave the Nazis a lot of superior technology and understanding, but they're limited in what they've got. God holds the example, the ultimate example, and that's in the Levitical priest's 12 gemstone ephod, the tablet of judgment. Why is it a tablet of judgment? In Deuteronomy 28th chapter, it's talking about Satan been giving all these stones. And I always wondered, this is kind of a really freaky, weird text of scripture. I don't understand it. Go back to the original Hebrew. These elements as stones are used as a construction element, as creating something, and it says an intertwining fence. This is a global grid line that keeps us in linear time. But eventually this is going to be used and manipulated. He gets 9 of the 13 stone, or 9 of the 12 stones, but the 3 main ones are left out. These 3 main ones, each one of the tribes has a meaning. Each one of the stones has a meaning. When you add them all up, the 3 things that he's denied is they basically adding everything together. One means to bring life, one means to be an overcomer, and one means to be a servant. The three things that Satan will never be is an overcomer. Something will bring life, because what? He brings death and destruction. And to be a servant. He doesn't want to be a servant. He wants everybody to serve him. So here's the three. It's like you got a recipe and you keep the three main ingredients out. He's very limited in what he's able to do. God has got all of the things, and he's giving us all of it.
He also needs permission to even be able to do anything to any of us. You can see it in Job when he has to go to God and he needs permission. So guys out there, we have great news. Okay. He needs permission. So, so don't worry. It's not like you guys should be scared, just, he's going to get me. At least he needs to ask God for permission before
you have an intercessor. You have Jesus Christ intercessing for you all the time if you pray, man. So don't worry about him. You're good.
Yeah. Hey, Gary, so Jim was saying how you've done all this work on the bloodlines. Do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Well, we haven't let Art in yet, so.
Okay, Art.
Oh, no, I'm just enjoying the chat, guys, so no problem. But no, I think the bloodline thing is really fascinating. I think one of the most important things from my perspective, from my understanding, I don't know what you guys think on this, was what they were really trying to do was corrupt the bloodline of the Messiah, because they knew that the Messiah had to come from a pure bloodline from Adam all the way to Christ. And if they could disrupt that bloodline and disrupt the pure blood to the Messiah, they thought they could somehow, alter God's plan, which is they became all really close to doing that at one point, where I think there was only like one person left in that lineage at one point. And but we know all this, that God's plan followed through, and Christ, of course, was born and rose again. So, but it is fascinating how all these things, Satan, like you said, Satan has never created anything. All he does is mimic, masquerade, and invert the truth. I like what Jim was saying. It's like baking a cake and leaving out the main ingredients. But you're given some of it, and so you think you got it right. Like, oh wow, this sounds just right. And so people investigating these things, they get these bits and pieces, and they go out on these rabbit trails that really lead to nowhere, but they sound really good. And they get into all these other things like the occult or New Age or different things. But and that can be a really important part of the journey, actually, that God may allow you to go through. So looking back, you can have a better perspective on your understanding later and be a better witness to others. So you'll find that many of the greatest researchers have a background that expose, like the Nephilim and some of these things actually were once deeply into the New Age or the occult, because that's what they're now trying to expose. So but I just
that was a bunch of really good points. And that is, when we're all born, we have our handprints in a hospital, we have our handprints and fingerprints and footprints all taken. And why would that be? When they're not even good, after about 6 months, they grow and expand, so they're not even worth anything. It's because we're being tracked always, because they are looking for the bloodline of Christ, as you were just saying, Art. So that is super important to understand. And it's not a paranoid type of thing. It may seem that way, but we're tracked completely nowadays. Cell phones, everything is tracking. And once you understand the spiritual nature of all of this, then it's like, oh, why wouldn't you track your enemy? If you had the capacity to do so, then you would do it. And that's exactly why they do the things that they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and going back as well to the changing of the blood, the transhumanism, the transgender. I believe the transgender movement, a lot of this is really not about making men women and women men. It's about making humans non-human, humans into something that they can pick and choose what they want to be, and ultimately gods, back to the original sin, of course. Whether it's Freemasonry, the Jesuits, the Gnostics, the Kabbalah, they all basically teach
The Mormons, Scientology.
Yeah, Mormons, Scientology. I mean, the list goes to every one of them. And you look at the main cults, from Manson to the Jim Jones cult to the Rajneesh. They all taught the original sin as the main foundation of their, in one form or another. That basically through your own works, through your own knowledge, through your own secret meditation or magical rituals or whatever it may be, it comes in a lot of disguises, that you can reach a level of godhood. And now we're seeing this push through things like DMT and the entities that they interact with tell these same lies, that you must look within, that you are your own savior. There is nothing that can save you but yourself, and knowledge is all within you. And this all is the repeating pattern of the original sin. And I think that's kind of like something that like they can't escape. They have to repeat the same pattern in some way, and they change the disguise a little bit. Aliens, the same thing, right? Is it just coincidence that every alien, connection with people who have claimed to be abducted or who have channeled aliens, basically that's the first thing they tell you is, Jesus was a great guy, but he was just an avatar like, Krishna, Buddha, and you can be just like Jesus, through works and meditation, and we chose you to be special. And that's what people are told during DMT. That's what people are told with out-of-body experiences and past life regressions. That's what people are told with Ouija boards. I mean, so is that a coincidence? And then, so I think these things, the nuts and bolts issues you can actually dig into and show people, like, this is history. This is what Blavatsky wrote, and this is what's happening right now. Alice Bailey had her 10-point plan, laid out. Look at what's happening right now in history. Is this coincidence?
It's being played out.
Yeah. So anyway, I want to hear Gary's insight into the bloodlines. So
For sure.
appreciate it.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that you really need to sort of understand. And before I sort of touch into kind of going a little bit back to the beginning, and I won't take too long to do this, but I just wanted to underline what Ark was talking about, that not only did they want to taint or corrupt the bloodline of Jesus, or who would be the ancestors of Jesus. If they couldn't do that, then they wanted to destroy Israel from the face of the earth, just as the Amalekites swore to replace them with their own dragon Messiah. And understand that the Amalekites, as being the descendants of a hybrid race that come from Tema, who's a Horim, and Eliphaz, son of Esau, is the one who lost the birthright, lost the blessings, and lost the Messiah promise. So if they could wipe Israel from the face of the earth, they would either assume that through Keturah's son and through the Arabs with Ishmael, or through Esau, and also to usurp Jesus and perhaps have him create a bloodline, just as Satan was trying to tempt Jesus. So they're attacking on all fronts. They're all in to try and make sure that humankind do not reach their destiny, and they justify their rebellion. Yeah. One of the big questions that comes about in terms of bloodline is the question that a lot of people, when they don't believe in the idea that angels as spirit beings could take a physical form, even though, as has been talked about, we have examples of angels being able to physically interact in the earth, just as they could be here spiritually. It's kind of their choice. But for a lot of people, it's, well, how can that happen, right? Even though, because they've been taught that they're spirit beings and therefore they can't have sex and there's no marriage in heaven, and that's, of course, just a heavenly rule, not a physical rule. It's against the laws of creation to create demigods and create that counterfeit spirit, which are the demons. But here's how they do it. If you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. is that if you look at Jude 1:6, when they left their habitation, that word habitat or habitation is the Greek word oiketerion. And it's used one other place in the New Testament in 2 Corinthians 5:2, where for the house of heaven. Oiketerion in the definition is a dwelling place for the spirit. So they left a place for the dwelling place for a spirit, just as there's a spiritual body and there's a physical natural body. And they came to the earth, but to interact, they can't use the spiritual body. So they have to create a physical body. And they have the ability to take a form and or a gender of their choice, because when you're going from spiritual to the physical, you have the ability to create that body. And how that, and why that is done is that they need a dwelling place for their spirit. And so if we understand soul, body, and spirit, the soul and the body are part of the physical world, and the spirit comes from heaven. So to interact, they need an oiketerion. They need a soul and a body to physically interact. And that's how they do it. And when you create that body, create that oiketerion, you create the DNA, which allows you to produce offspring with human females if they choose, and to create a bloodline. Now, within the bloodlines, the purity of that bloodline and the ennoblement of that bloodline, as in a scion or a grafting. So if you hear that term scion, it's a double entendre in the bloodlines and in the secret societies. It's a grafting in of another ennobled bloodline. We're told in the Book of Enoch, and yes, we do not have a Hebrew manuscript that's complete to verify it, but there's a lot of things in there that run quite consistent. It says 200. Doesn't matter whether there's 200, there's 500, or 100 in the first go around. There's a lot of bloodlines, even in the first incursion. And they keep their genealogies. And in the royal bloodline, in the noble elite, it's where you fit into the overall hierarchy is the purity and the ennobleness of that bloodline. So they track their genealogies. And so you take Prince Charles, for example, and he has said that he has genealogies that go back into the mists of time. And what's quite interesting, he says he's descended from Vlad the Impaler, who Dracula is based on. And Vlad the Impaler was your typical noble Celt or your noble Tuatha de Danann, one of the Tartarians that escaped from Tartarus after the flood, according to occultist views, and created, as what was being referenced earlier, the Tartarian Empire. And they went south into the Middle East, according to their, not my belief, this is what they believe, and also into England and Ireland and up the Danube to Germany and Russia. But he takes his bloodlines back to the Tuatha de Danann. And he was the archetypical Rephaim after the flood. So he had red hair, hazel eyes,
Wow.
pale skin. I mean, he had an allergy to sunlight, where the night opiere ideology starts to come in. He was educated in Vienna in the mystery school of Solomon, so he was well into the mystics. And his bloodline, going back into Scythia, goes back to an angel that they call Camiel, which is also known as Keziah in the Book of Enoch. Understand the bloodline is so key to the royal Masons. And if you understand secret societies and bloodlines, if you want to understand secret societies, you have to understand the bloodlines, because the upper end of the hierarchical order are the royal Masons, who take their bloodlines back to the Rephaim before the flood. And according to their genealogy, some of them even take their bloodlines to before the flood. And that's not to open up a rabbit trail as to, or in a rabbit hole as to how they survived the flood, but that's what they believe. And what's important to understand about that is not necessarily what we believe, it's what they believe, and then what they're doing with that information and that belief.
Well, I want to
Yes.
hop in real quick because you mentioned Vlad the Impaler, and on my research, I have found that Vlad the Impaler is the son of Quetzalcoatl. That Quetzalcoatl became Vlad the Impaler, went from a spirit form into a physical form as Vlad the Impaler. John Vivanco, a famous, what's it called, a remote viewer, him and his team, they tasked looking for the real face of Vlad the Impaler. And when they looked at him, they saw Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent. And his name is the son of Dracul, you know. So this is all very interesting. And with the human sacrifice he needed, this is from my meditations, I got that he needed the human blood, to drink the human blood in order to stay and remain physical. And you know, that's just mind-blowing that Vlad the Impaler, you're saying, escaped Tartarus. And
well, no, he didn't, but his bloodlines go back to those giants. But as what was also said earlier is the Avatara. The Avatar is the fallen angel. The Avatara is the one that receives the Avatar. And in return, it's a symbiotic relationship as opposed to a possession, which is not symbiotic. And what they'll do is they'll add wisdom, knowledge, power, longer life, those types of things. And biblically, we get that. When you understand when Judas was trying to overcome his intrepidation to betray Jesus, Satan enters into him, Avatara, to give him the courage to go through with it.
Oh, okay. That's really interesting. And I guess that's kind of how the Book of Enoch, when it mentions that the fallen angels, when they first met up with humans, they had them acquainted with plants, which I take back to what Ark was saying with their psychedelics, the cutting of roots, that is how they first inhabited or helped let the human know that they were there in spirit form, was teaching them. And when you look at any psychedelic, they say that the plants told the humans what to do, but it was actually the fallen angels as invisible beings whispering to them what to do.
Yeah, it creates those openings for them to be able to channel through different dimensions. But what people forget, though, and I'll let everybody else back in, is that particularly today with the New Age movement, and they try and get people to do that, or astral praying and a whole bunch of other different things, is that who they're encountering typically aren't the angels that aren't in the abyss, the fallen angels not in the abyss. They're likely to come in contact with the demons, and they want your body because they need an oikatarian to interact with the physical world.
So they trick you. They give you, that's what they do with the psychedelics, is, or that's the channel. You know, I think me and Ark discussed this on our podcast that we did together. That's the channel. So they're going to trick you into taking it. And then you're going to be, you're opening up the spiritual world. You're making it okay for them to inhabit you, or for them to be in, you know, you're inviting them into your life pretty much. Right?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's the invitation. Correct.
Yeah. And I have experience in this. This is how I woke up. I broke free from the matrix by doing psychedelics, and I was misled into believing things that weren't true. I had energies that were stuck in me, and it wasn't until I had this injury that it was over the course of 3 days of, you know, just living my life, that having this injury, demons were chased out of me by the name of Jesus Christ. Like, I was literally saved by Christ. I was went in the bathroom to vomit and nothing came out, but I felt so much relief. Like, there was so much that came out of me spiritually, and it got in there. Maybe it was in there before, but it was definitely the psychedelics helped keep me in a state where I thought that I was going to be a god, as Ark was saying, that ye shall be like gods. And it was always giving me half truths and things that were kind of coming to fruition, but maybe not exactly as I was being led. And I had to break free of that from the use of Jesus Christ. So, you know, this is all tying in together. So amazing right here. That's why you see Joe Rogan pushing the DMT thing so much. We're talking about podcasting here. He's got the #1 podcast in the world. And what he's doing is he keeps telling people, hey, you guys got to take the DMT. It's going to show you that there's a spiritual world out there. It's not going to, whenever anybody brings up the Bible, though, on his podcast, he shoots it down right away.
right away, dude. Even when some of his friends, like Eddie Bravo, which is one of his close friends, brought up the Bible and saying, "Hey, dude, there's truthers that are out there that are bringing in the Bible now, bro," and he just shoots it down quickly because he, in fact, is also a shield for obviously the elites. That's why he got the $120 million contract from Spotify. But he's also trying to influence these people that he has watching to take the DMT. It's going to open up your spiritual eye and all this stuff, bro. So
Right,
it's
right.
a-
And if,
gateways.
yeah, and if
Yeah.
you want to get high, you're going to get high. It doesn't really matter, if you want to say it's DMT, if you want to smoke a lot of weed, it's that you don't want to be here. And the important thing about the Bible teaches you to be human, that you want to be the best person that you are supposed to be. You're supposed to live the life of Christ as a human, and you don't need those other
Sober-minded.
things. Yeah, yeah.
sober. All right, so
Well,
anyway,
what's interesting is even if, even where there are no drugs, they will still find ways to get in. There's cultures that do rhythmic twirling or chanting or drumming or, some sort of repetitive action that actually allows them to get into these altered states of consciousness and interact with these exact same entities. So they find a way to interact with people and spread these same ideas.
And your guys' industry, the music industry, secular music, hip hop,
Absolutely.
I mean, that's a huge way of letting things into you. You
Absolutely.
take Eminem, who's claimed to be the best of all time, and he has how many alter egos? I mean, Cardi, what's her name? Nicki Minaj have an alter egos. Beyonce,
Cardi B, Cardi B has Roman, which is a male, and she says every time she performs,
Nicki
anything
Minaj.
violent. She said Nicki Minaj, yeah. She said anytime she performs anything violent, then Roman takes over. Or Slim Shady, his alter ego, that's when he does his violent horror type of raps.
Familiar spirits. They speak to familiar
bro.
spirits. They keep that line. They've always done that through movie stars. Marilyn Monroe.
That's how they perform, bro.
James Dean used to do that back in the day.
30,000 people.
James Dean and dude, even if you think, I'm telling you, man, these guys have these. They have it down. They've been taught these secrets. They've been taught these things. The secret of mind control. The secret of just even abortions. They taught us so many different things. Wearing makeup, war, how to prepare the Iron Age, the making of chariots back then. They were teaching these things, and man, just like when they said back when in Nimrod days, when God confounded all the languages, now we have all the same language again. We have the internet. Everybody can learn this.
Emojis.
Anything we can learn is our language is now one again. There's nothing that we cannot make. There's nothing that we cannot accomplish. And once we start going back in the days of Noah, I think that's when the real trouble starts coming. That's when God really starts to say, hey, whoa. You guys are doing it again. You guys repeat. No one teaches the history no more. So we're bound to repeat it. So every time it's this repetition. Through the Bible, it's all repetition. It's the Gentile way was prophecy was to fulfill and to something happens, they fulfill it. But into the Jewish, it's pattern. It's always pattern. And this is how it's been going on for years. It's pattern coming again. It's going to be coming again. It's going to be coming again. It's going over and over. No one teaches the history of how this was, and you're bound to repeat it. And I don't know if you guys think about that, but I feel like that's one big thing we're going to do. It's going to repeat itself, and they're going to commingle with men again, and it's going to happen again. And we're going to
have. Well, that's a great segue into the secret societies, happening again from the fallen angels, from the times of Enoch. They were doing it then, and now maybe there probably is physical beings somewhere, maybe amongst us, maybe hidden in the hollow earth, maybe just in caves somewhere on the earth. There may be beings, but there are humans that are doing these things today that were exactly told in the Book of Enoch. And Jim, do you want to hop in here about the secret societies and how they're basically running things today?
Well, they are. And I think all of the evidence is there. People are wondering, why are we going through what we're going through right now? Has Trump abandoned us? There's so many different uncertainties. Even friends of mine who are saying, see, Jim, everything you said isn't happening. It's, he's gone off the deep end, this, that, and the other. And it's like, guys, in the prophecy, sometimes I know in my own life, I see visions or have dreams. I see events. I see snapshots. I don't know exactly how they're going to be incorporated, by who, or when. I just know that these things are going to happen. I know they're going to happen in a rapid, like dominoes, but I don't know how they're going to interact with certain events. Some things I perceive my own mind through my own filter, depending on, based on how I've been taught. I am a graduate from Central Bible College, and that is kind of like the Arminius camp, but I'm basically on the other camp. But I don't look at myself as one or the other. People try to pinpoint what kind of background I have. I said I'm a Calmanist, Baptist. So try to put that in a box. You can't. I'm willing to get along with either side of the camps because everybody's got a transparency or a piece of the puzzle. If we quit arguing with each other, find out what we have in common, we'll see that the many things that seem like they're in opposition are fully compatible if we quit looking at each other as hostile enemies. So who has done all this? The elite, who probably runs and manages most of the theological colleges today in this world, who translates the Bibles today in this world. The original language has not been manipulated like the New Agers try to claim, things have been changed. No, there's a consistency in the original language all throughout, whether it be the Septuagint or the Masoretic texts. What has been conflicting is academia on the highest levels. We've been purposely taught many things that are the traditions of men, and now it's taught as absolute doctrine for events that haven't even happened yet. My God, we made the same mistake that the Jews made. When all the scriptures, Jesus said, you seek salvation, they speak of me. And he said, seek ye the scriptures, and in them you seek salvation, they speak of me. Here they are saying, well, when the Messiah comes, he's going to do this, this, and this. Why? Because that's what we were taught, and that's what we're expecting. So here they are looking face to face to the Messiah, telling him what he's supposed to do and what he's not supposed to do. I mean, the most ultimate stupidity. Man depending on man's own knowledge. We've allowed, for the nearly infallible version, the NIV. On the board of translators, we had 3 agnostics, we had 1 atheist, and we had 2 members of the secret societies. They're interpreting the Bible for us? How insane is that? How did that ever even happen? When the Bible clearly says that these words came inspired by holy men of God, not through our own intellect, but it was through the anointing of God for people who were seeking the truth, who are called to these kinds of things. Many of us today in this room, myself included, don't measure up to the mandatory credentials that people want, that the elites say we should have. If we got a willing heart that wants the truth above anything, you don't need anything other than just mainly the basic understandings of hermeneutics. And how many of us in the West even know what Pardes is? Pardes is actually the mindset of how the Jews wrote the Bible in layers. And Pardes is an acronym. It's for a four-layered thing. It's the Pesant, the Darash, the Ramirez, and the Sod. And all 4 of these are how the Jewish mind even approaches. Anybody that went to a rabbinical school in Israel understands this, and many that are here. Fortunately, I had a Messianic Jew who was one of my best friends who actually studied Pardes and taught me Pardes. And I'm amazed at why isn't this taught in the West? My God, it's our roots for understanding how the Jews wrote the Bible, how we can get so much out of one verse, because some verses can have all 4 layers. And it's not taught here in America. Why is that? Because it's designed by the elite who are controlling every doggone thing around. So academia is completely, I'm not saying it, throw it all out. I'm glad that I had my college education. I'm glad that I'm able to study the Bible on a scholarly level. And God's put certain people in my life. I mean, 2 of my closest friends back 10, 15 years ago was Dr. Mike Heiser. I never hung out with him, but I saw him every year. And you know how some people you connect with and you're just like kindred spirits, and you're friends, even though you haven't seen them for a year, but the next time you see him, you just pick up like nothing ever happened. That's the kind of relationship I had with Dr. Mike Heiser. How does a biker welder from Detroit become good buddies with one of the 5 foremost experts on ancient Hebrew. That was a God thing. I said at roundtable discussions, I don't have a PhD in anything. Well, prayer, healing, and deliverance. That's my PhD. I don't have a PhD. I got a year and a half of Bible college. I learned all the basics and I started applying them and I took off on it. I had mentors in my life that were scholars that taught me how to use all the right reference material so that I could rightly divide it on a PhD level. I've been invited in the Ancient of Days conferences we had annually in Roswell. I was annually invited to come and speak. They all thought I had a PhD. When they found out I was a biker welder from Detroit, how did you let this guy in there? How did you know? But yet I noticed that whenever they were up against secular people with what I call the ancient aliens religion, they'd come and call me and ask me if I would come and join them. So it's like this. I wasn't a person they wanted to hang out with. But if you remember, I'm a sci-fi nut. I think most of you are. I hope you are. So you remember Thunderdome? Remember when that guy with the little guy on top, was fighting and everything? Well, when they had a really, really dangerous fight, they'd always make sure he was in the ring. So what they would do is they would call me and say, Jim, we were having a roundtable discussion. We'd like you to be there. Oh, okay. But so they would continue having me, even though they were somewhat set back that I didn't even have a PhD, but they still used me, which tells me that while they're sitting there quoting all these different theologians on different things, I'm just going, making it easy. Look what the Bible says. Look at the language. Yeah, I could say that. And I would go to Mike and I would use him as a, because he's the expert in Hebrew. So I'd say, well, Mike, does this Hebrew line up? Could it say that? Is it talking about the Gabor as being separate entities with the Nephilim? Well, yeah, Jim, it could say that, but, and I said, oh, Mike, you're going to miss Billy Goat religion again, but stuff. He wouldn't necessarily agree with the premise and the conclusions, but he would at least was kind enough to let me know, yes, your language, according to the Hebrew, is in line, and it could say that, but I don't think it does. Or he would say, but I think it does, but you don't have the qualifications to. Well, yeah, I do. My Bible says that it pleases God to use the things that are of no effect to make no effect the things that are, the despised things of this world, to show everybody that it's not the person, it's him through the person.
Yeah, and I think that you have the credentials by having the utmost discernment, by using God to guide you in your life, because you came from somewhere so away from God that you've been led to this place, and that's where you get to understand the things that are happening. Now, Josh and Jason, you guys had a excellent episode on the secret societies and when the Jesuits and the Freemasons started. Do you guys want to give your take on?
I know Gary was talking about the bloodlines. So Gary, are we talking about like the Council of 13? Are we talking about like the Committee of 300? Are we talking about like the Order of Garter, which would be like more the Queen Elizabeth, that Prince Philip, that type of side, the Rothschilds, the Astors? Is that the bloodline we're talking about? And then how does that connect with the Jesuit, Black Pope, that type of control? Like, which I always like, this is what I always fight with right here. Who has the control? Is it the those people, or is it the Jesuits? Is it the Pope? I mean, who's the one that has control of this, this
so think of it
world besides Satan?
Think of it this way in terms of the secret societies as we understand it. That's a Western branch. There are bloodlines and secret societies all over the world, just like as there are in China. But let's stick with the ones that most people are familiar with. There is a hierarchy of secret societies, and I would think of that as a tree trunk. And you have Freemasonry, not where a lot of people think it is. It's actually the lowest sort of level of adept secret societies. And so that would be quite low on the trunk. And now imagine different branches going out of the trunk. These are the organizations that Freemasons are going to control at the adept level. So they'll control the lower level secret societies, the innocent ones, whether or not it's the Lions Club or the Elks Club and all of those other ones. But they also have, since the fall of the Templars, it's been decentralized. And so each of the trunk organizations have their own agenda, just as each of the branch ones do that come from the trunk organization. So the Freemasons are generally focused on politics, the media, and the army. And typically, if you look at what was going on in the American Revolution, you can see a lot of that between the politics and the army. And that's where they kind of put their focus. So that's where they're setting up lower level organizations as it branches out. So they got all these branches coming in. Above that, in the trunk, you've got the Illuminati. And they kind of dwell at the center, adept level of Freemasonry, but they were in charge of bringing about world government and destroying Christianity. And as you move up, you have at the adept level of a Freemason is 33rd degree Scottish Rite, but the old system is the 3rd degree, which is the York Rite. And is the same degree level that's in all of the other mystical systems around the world. Just as there's different branches of that in Freemasonry. If you're going to oversee multiple Masonic organizations, you're going to be 5th degree. So you're moving up, right? And so the Illuminati is going to be somewhere in there. Now in Freemasonry and an Illuminati, you have to be at least some sort of DNA and bloodline, and you're invited in. Or you might be new money, but usually they're going to be utilized through a branch level that I'll explain in a second. But you got to be invited in. And so the Illuminati, as you move up, they're going to be a little more pure in those bloodlines, but they're not anywhere near the top yet. And so as you move up, now you have the Rosicrucians. And the Rosicrucians, they were the ones that originally formed the 33 Council of 33, the 33 invisible ones, even though that's now higher up on the chain. But this is right after the fall of the Templars when they're decentralizing. And so they're the ones who are going to sponsor the new Templars into the Roman Catholic Church, and that's the Jesuits. And so they're going to have orders like the Montesa order are going to be funding Ignatius of Loyola, and they're going to eventually take over. In fact, Borgia, who was the one that's funding him, will actually be the Grand Master of the Montesa order and take over the Jesuits as the 3rd leader. And so the Jesuits tend to report up, probably not into the Rosicrucians now because there's so much of the black nobility of Italy that's involved. They're going to be intersecting on that branch a little higher up. But the Rosicrucians are that intersection between the lower levels and the pureblood. So 50% of the Rosicrucians are purebloods. And then as you move up, you have the Committee of 300 that's above the Rosicrucians. And so you have like the Club of Rome, that would be, as an example, reporting into that, because there's lower level bloodlines that are working for them in that Club of Rome organization, but the ones at the top are all royal bloodlines and they're princes and nobles. And their job was to create 10 groups of nations for the world empire, and they were created in the late 60s. But also imagine the Bilderbergers. Again, you have the royals who are running the Bilderberger meeting, right? And so you would have people like Bill Gates and Clinton and all this new money that are entering in at that level and associating with them. But they're only getting marching orders every year so that their offspring can marry into the bloodlines and have a more important role down the road. The Bohemian Society would funnel into the Illuminati as one of their organizations. And then above the Committee of 300, you have the Council of, the Council of 33, which is moved up from at the time of the creation of the Jesuits. And then above that, you have the 13 families. So everybody from the mid-level of the Rosicrucians and up up the trunk are Royal Masons, as opposed to Freemasonry, because Freemasonry is created, again, after the fall of the Templars by Royal Masons, in this case, the Sinclairs, right, who are the St. Clairs, who was a battle partner of Hugh de Payon in the Crusades, and part of the hidden founders for the creation of the Knights Templar. And that was a Royal Masonic organization. And it's this Royal Masonic orders that have like the rosy red cross orders that go back into history and back before the flood. And before the flood, you guys were talking about knowledge, you had this knowledge cult that became Enochian mysticism, Enoch, son of Cain, as opposed to son of Jared. And he's developing the knowledge, according to the Masons, this is their history, the knowledge that Adam had learned in Eden that was passed on to Cain and is developed by Enoch and disciplined into the 7 sacred sciences, or the 7 liberal sciences, or arts as we would know it today. And with that knowledge and the development of that, they developed the mystical religion that crosses the flood at Babel, which is another rabbit hole. But this is the organization that is going to then utilize mystery schools along with the mystical religion to develop and teach the elite the knowledge. And this is the organizational structure that then forms a secret society. So they take their patriarchs back to Cain, Abel, Tubal-Cain, Nama, Jubal, all the ones that are listed of notoriety, Lamech in that lineage. And this is the organization that the Nephilim are going to inherit as they take over all of the dynasties and kingships around the world and establish the noble elite and the feudal system, where the humans are just the servitude class, and they dominate the priesthood, they dominate the royal families, the warrior class, and the merchant class. And this is that organizational structure that has at the top end of it the Royal Masons, that gets reorganized at Babel with Nimrod as the first Grand Master of their constitution after the flood, with Babel and the tower being the first projects, with the knowledge that he receives from Hermes. And the knowledge that we talked about in the 7 sacred sciences, that's the knowledge that will merge with the illicit knowledge from heaven, from the gods or the fallen angels, that is going to accelerate them into apocalypse. So it's going to advance to a level that we haven't even reached yet. And we see our knowledge advancing at that, expanded, accelerated pace, because it's that overarching sign that you guys were talking about that happens after all of the individual events and follows the fig tree generation, which is an overarching sign of the end times Jesus gave us. And then you get the days of Noah. And Jesus used very specific language there. In Genesis 9:29 says, in the days of Noah was 600 years before the flood and 350 years after the flood. And we need to understand that what happened both before and after the flood are things we need to be aware of, for that nothing new is under the sun doctrine that was also being raised, that things have this pattern of happening again. We need to understand all of that included this knowledge, this mystical religion that begat again at Babel, which is the root word for the Babylon religion, and included giants.
Oh, I want to ask a question before anyone else jumps in real quick. Have you ever heard of the 42nd degree of Freemasonry?
Well, I would take everything that's in a 42nd degree as in the Scottish Rite, because 33rd degree would be 3rd degree in the York Rite. So divide everything by 3, right? Okay. So what does that get you? That gets you maybe up one more, maybe 1 degree, maybe between 1 and 2 degrees, because they're just splitting those degrees into 3 different levels, right? So the next one would be 36, 39, 42. But it's not going to be 6th degree, it's not going to be 7th degree, and it's not going to be, and I've heard as many as 9, 11, and 13. I don't know, I'm not part of the secret societies. What I have been told is there's at least 7 of those degrees. But when you're dealing with the Royal Masons, they're initiated from childhood. So they're adepts
Mhm.
before they even reach adulthood, but they can't take that title. So if you ever hear a 32nd degree adept, they either don't know what they're talking about, because that in the Scottish Rite, it's a 33rd degree. But in the bloodlines, that means that they are adept level, but they're not old enough yet to receive that title. And it's sometime after 25.
Oh, well, I bring up the number 42 because it's very odd, Freemasonry. I mean, MLB baseball is a Freemason thing. And you have Jackie Robinson was number 42, and no one else was allowed to wear his number except for Mariano Rivera, New York Yankees. And these are all symbols of Freemasonry, and it's all celebrated.
Probably would be by the numerics, it would be 4th degree.
Okay, because
you brought up 42, and I was reading Daniel. I was reading Daniel the other day, in Daniel 43, but 42 as the toes of the feet were part. This is 42. This is Daniel 2:42. As the toes of the feet were part of iron and the part of clay, and so the kingdom should be partly strong and partly broken. But 43 says, but as well, and whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, and they shall not cleave to one another, because iron does not mix with clay. And that's talking about that's Nebuchadnezzar's dream, but that's another form of where they talk about how that seed's gonna mingle later on, with like how the Roman Empire split into two down there. You got the east and the west, and it comes down that you got the Byzantine. I forgot I think it's the western or the eastern. I can't remember, but as it goes down, you still have that mingling. It says mingle. So if they're going to mingle the seeds of men, that means they're messing again with DNA again. So that's all the way down in Daniel. That's a prophecy that's going to come on. That there should be later on. That should be coming on now. But that kind of tripped me out. I don't know if anybody has anything to say about that.
I need to correct myself on what I just said. I did the math wrong on that. So it's 11 is the multiplier from the 3rd degree. So that would be shy of a 4th degree at 42.
Okay, because I was, and I've gotten some things in meditation, and I briefly hear people talking about it. Not very many people talk about this type of thing, so it's not very easy to find this type of information. But it was that the celebration of the number 42, the movie with Jackie Robinson coming out a few years ago, I was under the impression that was because there are very few 42nd degree Royal Masons, or however they're classified, and that there was someone new came into the leadership role, and that's why they all started wearing the 42 patch. And that's why the number 42 became so popular, because there was a new leader.
Yeah. As I say, I've not been able to discover how many degrees there are, but when you're looking at that sort of hierarchy, I mean, and then you look at all of the royal Masonic orders that are out there today. I mean, it could multiply very, very quickly after you get by the Rosicrucians that are probably somewhere around 7. And, if people haven't heard of some of these ones, there's this will really freak people out, but there's actually from the Norse, this one comes from, and they are the Knights of the Seraphim for the Swedish royal bloodlines. It couldn't get more obvious, but that would be those type of Royal Masonic organizations that are at the top as you approach the top. And it's the Swedish bloodlines that produced Rollo, who changed their name when they expropriated Normandy to St. Clair, which is the transliterated Sinclair that started the Freemason organization after the fall of the Templars.
All right, guys, I love you guys. I appreciate it. I gotta take off because my wife is like, we just got back from Las Vegas, actually vacationing, and my wife has the kids right now, and she's like, please, I have a podcast tonight, tomorrow morning at 4 a.m, and another one at 9:45. So I love you guys. Gary, I'll talk to you October 22nd. I cannot wait. At I think Terrific. It's at 3:30 p.m. Pacific. Jason, I love you. Ark, I love you, bro. I'll have you on the show soon. And then Jim, I'll see you on the show too, man. I need to get you back on in November. And then thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you for hosting the show too, bro.
Thank you, Josh. And yeah, you'll be on my show in like 2 weeks too, the 23rd, I think.
Yeah. So we're packed and ready to go. Very nice to meet you, Gary. I'll talk to you then, and everybody else that's on the roster. Thank you so much, guys. I love you guys.
Have a good one.
And I'll pray for all of you tonight, right now, that everything goes great with this podcast and you have good connection. Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, brother.
So, Jason, did you want to hop in about the when we were just talking about the secret societies?
Oh, that's why I did that quote right there from Daniel. I think that's the secret societies that were started, as in Masons, as in Jesuits. They're all based off of just one thing. They all worship the devil. If you don't worship Jesus, you don't worship the way the way God wants you to worship him. You worship the devil. So when those things start coming through, when they have all, they were probably taught all the secrets of like you said, the mystics. They're in the Bible. There's all people don't believe in magic. They would say, like, it's kind of, and there is magic out there. This stuff is real. There's way to, they got people hypnotized every day through television, through how to use that, through how to use images, how to use anything to, because the devil uses your eyes. He does use your eyes, and God gets your ears. So if you hear and you're spiritual and you understand, like, and you can really get down the nitty gritty of it, you can understand it. You will see that there's things out there that are unexplainable, that are crazy, that do keep hidden behind the closed doors, and through entertainment, through, like you said, sports, all that stuff is just to keep your mind off of what's really going on in the background. It's a magic trick. They keep you entertained. Even back in Jesus's days, they used the gladiators, they used stuff like that to keep you entertained, to keep people's minds on what was really going on in the background, which was crazy sex cults, crazy. They were sacrificing children all the time. They were doing stuff that was very heinous in the eyes of God. And now it's coming again. They're starting to do it again. You hear of all this pedophilia going on. You hear of all this stuff that they're trying to push towards you, for your young kids to understand. In schools, they're teaching sex ed at a very young age for kids. They're trying to make it to where it was how it was back then, to where people don't think that if Christianity survived all these years, you don't think that any of those religions that were parallel to Christianity, the paganist worship during back then, that didn't go on. It still goes on today, and it's just in different forms. Mm-hmm. And people don't see that. They don't believe that. It's like, oh man, that's you're a conspiracy theorist if you think that. You're crazy. It's like, no, I just do my studies. I just look things up. I don't just take people's words for it at what they say is what it's supposed to be. It's like, no, I'm not going to do that, because it says to study and show thyself approved, and to not be ashamed of what you're studying, and to rightly divide the word of truth. And when you do that, you start to see the puppet show going on. You start to see the strings actually being operated. Like, man, this isn't right. And people are like, oh, did you see this on TV? It's like, oh man, I don't even want to comment on your guys' stuff anymore. It's not. It's weird. It's very weird. But I love this subject. But I'd like to hear some more about this stuff. I got a little while on here, so I'd like people to keep continuing going on and talk about this subject of the secret societies and the Nephilim, and how it all ties in together.
Ark, do you want to hop in?
I'd just say, real quick, that it's kind of interesting in today's age, the secrets have kind of been let out of the box, so to speak. The cat's out of the bag, with the internet and the sharing of information. We're kind of in the externalization of the hierarchy, or the Black Awakening, or, whatever you want to call it. I know there's different people that call these things different things, but, you see how all the symbols of these secret societies are all over kids' t-shirts. They're all over, music albums. They're just pushed in your faces everywhere and externalized to a point where, now that's because a lot of this stuff has been drawn into mainstream society and into music and into the ideology of everyday living. And, I think where this is heading with the whole transhuman movement, or the idea that people can make themselves into anything they want is really the foundation of magic, and, Satanism, do what thou wilt, you're your own God, elevate yourself through, if not magic, then through technology, and, I think Arthur C. Clarke had this famous quote of saying, magic, what is it? The technology gets to a certain point, becomes, indistinguishable from magic. So that's kind of where we're reaching with the technological realm of tapping into other dimensions with quantum computers, and people that are working with this technology claiming that they're interacting with entities that they don't know even who they are. They don't know how their technology really even works and how it's arriving at these conclusions. You get to the point where you just have a black box, which is basically just a Ouija board in disguised as technology. And really it's just a demon, interface, no different than a modern day Ouija board. This is just made in a different disguise. So I think that's kind of where we're heading toward utilizing technology. And one thing I wanted to bring up, and before I forget, and while I have a group of great minds online here, talking about the whole, I know you guys have brought up the Caucasian or the Nordic type of idea, and the idea of the Nordic giants, and that this is a recurring theme. And this is something else that I've kind of noticed. And one of the things that I've kind of thought about and looked into, I know there's a verse in the Bible that talks about when Noah was born, they thought that his hair was white and his eyes were of flame, and and they thought that he was possibly a offspring of the angel or the fallen angels or something to that effect, and that the idea of blonde hair or red hair is this reoccurring theme also with the giants. And one thing that I thought was interesting, how people try to make it a racial type thing. I thought, well, what if this is more of almost like albinism, like albinos? One thing that's curious about albinos, so I got into studying albinos and the connections of, like, for instance, the pineal gland and melatonin and melanin, and the connection of these types of things. There's a lot of claims in that regard of what the powers of these things and what they mean spiritually. When you look at albinos, they are within every race. So it's not a racial thing. And as a matter of fact, there are more numbers of albinos in the African culture than any other racial group. And
wow.
What's even more fascinating is albinos are hunted by witch doctors in Africa to this day on such a level that they literally are put in specialized camps. You can watch documentaries on this on YouTube. There's thousands and thousands of albinos missing limbs, missing arms, legs, because they've been hunted down by witch doctors who have cut off their body parts to use in rituals. And this is such a big thing in modern going on right now that they have to put hundreds of albinos in special camps where they all live together, basically guarded, so they are not hunted down for their body parts. So there's obvious connection from witchcraft into this, albinos for some reason. I know that, like I said, the whole pineal gland and all these things. So it just makes me wonder, and I don't know if you guys have any insight to that or ever heard anything about that or connect any of those dots.
Well, again, this white thing is quite common, and even the Horim were white skin, very pale skin, and red hair. And when I don't tend to use the ites because I don't classify Israelites as giants. So I use the I am plural, and it shows up with some of these giant nations with the I am plural in the Bible. So the Horim had red hair and very pale skin. So I think that's the Rephaim, and I think that's the ones that migrated north as well, that the descendants of Japheth also intermarried with. But what's interesting about that white skin color is that you have something called the Albigens, in the bloodlines. And the LB gens, and LB goes back to white, blanched, and gens basically genealogy and patriarch, back to a particular patriarch, just as Albion would be one of those that is the obvious connection in the LB gens line. And this pale skin individual that the Rephaim were, because Horim were a division of the Rephaim as they're defined in Deuteronomy 2. Rapha has 3 different words in Hebrew. And the Rephaim go back to the giants, but you also have Rapha as the demon spirits or the ghosts or the shades, but you also have it as a doctor or a healer. And in that bloodline trait of that LB gens, of that white bleached skin, is the notion that the Rephaim had a healing, self-healing process, that if you cut off an arm, it would grow back, and that the only way of killing them was taking their head. So you had to do so much traumatic damage that they weren't able to self-heal. So within so much of the occult, they're looking for that type of gene, body parts, blood to work in with their magic, because they believe it has a link to that type of, through the physical aspects of it, to those types of things that they want to tap into for themselves. Because again, I mean, the shamans, no matter where they are around the world, they're just the priest class of the nobility. And they're also maybe looking for how to extend their lives. So just as blood was drank to extend their lives and to add to their cognitive abilities, they may be consuming those parts as well, in their, and doing it in rituals in that consumption to the same end. And that's tending to where, and I haven't dug super deep on it, and I'm not, again, part of secret societies or occult religions, but from what I can gather is that is all sort of mixed into that ritual aspect that they're looking for.
You know, that brings me to the thought of the societal joke as gingers, you know, red-haired, pale-skinned people, freckles, that they're soulless beings, and, you know, that they they feast off of humanity. Is that something you've come across, Gary? Anything?
Mark Zuckerberg. Doesn't he have 6 fingers? I heard he had 6 fingers too, doesn't he?
I don't know. Does he?
I heard he had 6 fingers, and he's pale.
Rows of teeth.
Yeah, and he looks like a freaking like
He looks like a robot.
Yeah. I think he has 6 fingers. Look at him drink his coffee. I think that's it. He should be like, how?
Well, I'll check that out. But it was definitely, it was bringing up that thought of gingers. You know, you're saying red hair, pale skin, and how they were hunted down. Your Ark was saying in Africa. You know, is this something that anyone's heard of? You know, this is just a thought that I'm having right now.
The American Indians have a story about those type of people.
Wow.
I think in North America, there's story of giants that were red haired and they're pale skin. That's just a story I heard. I don't know if it's viable.
Well,
I've heard of that.
Well, in fact, a lot of the settlements right after the flood were through the White Snake Clan, and the Hopi have the best sort of written tradition of that. But they could have been after the blood out of, you know, the albinos that are being chased as well, because the blood of the giants were thought to have, again, this cognitive ability to enhance that and longer life, but on steroids. So if you can imagine, just as sort of a quick comparative, and it's more of the fairy sort of aspect to the same idea. If you remember that show, The Highlander, and it's about these immortals, and they have to take their heads to kill them, but they get a quickening, right? And that quickening is that transfer of knowledge, that transfer of their lives, that transfer of their strength that made them even more so. That's just the allegory for drinking of blood. And so you've got the two major allegories. Is you have the fairy allegory, you have the dragon allegory. The fairy allegory, of course, brings into the Tuatha De Danann and the gingers and the fairy people. And then you also have the dragon bloodline, which is the patriarchal bloodline. And that Dracula is based on, who's a blood drinker and is that typical red hair, pale skin, hazel eyed Rephaim, Tuatha De Danann characters. So there's a lot to what they might want to do with a complete whole individual or even parts of the individual. But now you're into areas where you'd have to be on the inside to know why they would be taking certain parts. I don't know what.
Well,
You say dragon, I just want to say real quick, it made me think, I don't know if you guys, any of you are Game of Thrones fans, but the whole dragon clan, they all have the white hair.
oh, wow. Yeah,
The
I'm not
whole-
a fan of Game of Thrones. I
Are
never
any of
watched
you
it,
guys
but
watch
it's
Dragon?
interesting.
No, I never watched
Game
it,
of
no.
Thrones, there's basically a dragon clan, and all of them throughout their lineage are literally white-haired albinos.
Wow.
They all are dragon riders, and that's their
Well, and
lineage.
dragon in ancientology was identical with a serpent. So it doesn't matter whether or not
Right.
it's Tiamat, a Leviathan type character, or you have a six-winged seraphim. And that's why the gods looked in that serpentine look, is because they were the same. So it doesn't matter whether it's, the plumed or feathered serpent like the Quetzalcoatl, or a Naga, or the dragon creator gods in Egypt, or Osiris or Zeus being portrayed as serpent gods, or the Sumerian gods. Those were the seraphim fallen angels that were looked upon as those dragons, and their offspring would have looked similar, and that's why the kings were depicted as dragons. So they actually, within their society, they actually call themselves the House of Dragon.
Wow, that's what it is called on Game of Thrones, the House of the Dragon.
It sounds like a
That's crazy.
documentary.
So an element to this with the Third Reich, in the Hitler Youth, and the female version of Hitler Youth, they had Lebensborn project of birthing massive amounts of Aryans as quick and as fast as they could. They were very religious people, believe it or not. They were very ritualistic, and they enjoyed all of their sacred dances and everything. And there was one called the Dance of the Twins, where it looked like they were two women that were wearing little tennis uniforms, that this was actually the Hitler Youth uniform for the females. And they did the sacred dance of the twins. One was blonde hair, blue eyed, and one was red hair with green eyes.
Yep.
And this
Those
was
are the two traits.
dance to enhance the new emergence of what they called the new man, which would be the pure Aryan. And that's what they were working for, to accomplish what they believed lived in the inside of the earth, that they were destined to merge together to retake the surface of the earth. So it just kind of ties into the same,
Well,
theme.
and the Nazis, they had created, the Reichschurch, which was a Nordic Aryan religion, and they degraded Jesus to a prophet of
Right.
that religion, and they were a product of overlaying Völkisch and Grail ideology onto Theosophy, which is an offshoot of Gnosticism, is the religion of the Rosicrucians.
Right.
And they called it Ariosophy, which is that Arianism. And they not only were heavily inundated with that rogue Ariosophy, but they also were heavily funded, organized, and sponsored by secret societies. And the two most common ones that people might know of, the German Orden and the Thule Society. And the Thule Society is either Atlantis or a similar civilization in the antediluvian period, and that were blonde-haired, blue-eyed Aryans, and that's who they believed they were descended from, and that they were trying to backward engineer creation of the giants because they felt that the race had degraded down through intermarriage with humans down to a human size and impure. And if they could recreate the giants, that they would recreate them in that image. And that was the new man ideology, which is basically a Nephilim ideology of what they were trying to create. And so, and you have the Nazis as being kind of an archetypical analogy of what the end time is going to look like on a smaller scale. And so it goes back to that. There's nothing new under the sun. We're going to see all of those similar type of traits come about as we get closer to the last 7 years of the age.
Well, that brings me right to this trailer I saw for a movie the other day. It's called Lamb, and it is a a lamb is born from a lamb, but it has a human body and a lamb's head. And we have all throughout history, we look at Egypt, they have all these beings, with a bird head, with a anteater head. You have even Saint Christopher of Catholicism has a dog head.
Yeah.
Right. And so the way that I try to interpret things from the past is I try to be very literal with everything, because I think that they were being very literal, but because we're in a society today where everything is about average, there is a quote unquote normal that everything is supposed to look. But back in those times, I don't think everything looked that way, because, as I was saying before the broadcast started, that the fallen angels were mixing, as it clearly states in the Bible and the Book of Enoch, they were mixing the DNA of beings. And this goes to Sumerian, Egyptian, all these mythologies saying that the gods were mixing the DNA. And there's a certain amalgamation, a certain percentage of human DNA mixed with animals, reptiles, insects, and that's how you get your beings that are all the aliens are explained in that scenario. Either they're fallen angels, as the Anunnaki, you were just saying the seraphim, or are one and the same most likely. And then you have oh no,
Similar.
Okay.
Similar. But directionally, you end up kind of where you're going with there, but I'll let you finish and then I'll come back.
Okay.
In. How's that?
Okay. Yes. So then you have, your different insectoids, your ant-like beings, and all these different things. Even Ra, the sun god, with the bird head, and Thoth with the anteater head. These were all amalgamations of partial human and partial beast, and somehow they combined and made these beings. It's just by messing with the DNA. And I think with this movie coming out, this movie Lamb, is that they're setting this up. They're setting the stage for in the next few years that this is going to start to occur. All right,
so what I would add on to that is that look at it as two different types of creation beings that are going on. One is the chimera type of creation, where they get multiple kinds of animals combined with humans and combined with angels to create, the typical chimera effect. Like King Habada of the Cedar Forest would be a classic example. That's in the Epic of Gilgamesh. He is a classical sort of chimera. And but you also get different kinds of Nephilim, if I can put it that way. So if you look at the Watchers, they included the cherubim and the seraphim and the Ophanim. And if people don't know where that comes from biblically, that's the cherubim-like angel that's in the wheels in Ezekiel 1 and 10. And wheel can go back to Gilgal, as in Gilgal Raphaim, and you'll get a little bit of Gilgal as the wheel. But when it's referencing the angels within those wheels, that goes back to the Hebrew word ophan, and I am for the male plural, which is what First Enoch describes them as. So it's the throne gods, right? And they're also known as thrones. So the cherubim, though, have four faces, but typically when they're described on earth physically, they will have a head of a man and a body of some sort of bull or animal or bird, but they're also depicted with the head of an eagle or a bird and the body of a human. And what's interesting about that's the Anunnaki. They are watchers, but they're not seraphim because they were serpent-faced angels, right? And the cherubim were the ones that were surrounding the throne, and they're the ones who pull the throne as they're depicted in Ezekiel. So, but the seraphim, they're the ministers before the altar in the throne room. So they have different positions around the throne. But if you look at the falcon god, which is a bird god, or the Anunnaki, and other gods around the world, they have this legacy of producing offspring. And in this case, you would, in the Kisha Maya, they're called the Zabalba. And the Zabalba were like owl-faced demigods. And there was one particular group of these bird Nephilim warriors, kings, that was called Camazots, and that was the house of the bat. If you Google Camazots, you get the picture of Batman's costume. And you have also not just these ones, you have the Tengu gods, which were these eagle gods in Southeast Asia, China, and Japan. And Tengu, Tengu, you Google that, and you're going to get these warrior priest beings that are the offspring of the gods that were in Southeast Asia. And they acted just like the Nephilim. And in fact, the martial arts are attributed to coming from the Tengu offspring through their gods. You also have, biblically, to sort of bring it back, you have the lion men of Moab and the lion-like men of Gad, and you have Arioch, which means lion-like. And these were warrior Nephilim type of creatures, and typically those are the offspring, if you're using the Sumerian pantheon, of Nergal, a lion-faced god, or Mahis, or Sekhmet, or Bast in the Egyptian one, where Black Panther is a superhero that worships Bast because that's a lion god in the Egyptian pantheon. And you also have jackal-headed gods like Anubis, and you have Nebaz, that is recorded in the Bible, who is the Barker god, who also produced offspring. And Anubis produced a whole city of dog-headed men called Sinopolis in Egypt, basically Dog City. And you have all of these historians describing these beings as warriors, which is the sort of mythos that St. Christopher comes out of. And I won't go through the history of that, but I just wanted to lay out there that I think you've got two different kinds of creations. You have DNA manipulation going on, and you have these offspring of the angels that were mostly warriors, except for the seraphim class that were also the kings as well and the priests. And so I think you've got that mix. And what's also interesting is in the Epic of Gilgamesh, and I'll finish on this, is that whether it's Gilgamesh or Enkidu, who is created after the flood, or Utnapishtim, who is the individual and his family who survived the flood on an ark, they are 2/3 God and 1/3 human, not 50-50. So what that's telling us is they were somehow able to control the portions within those creations as well, in terms of the mix that they would want. And that would also suggest then that you could do, a third angel, a third human, and a third another animal, or split that up any way you want, which now brings in sort of that DNA manipulation, even with those types of creatures.
Well, that's amazing. So are Baal and Baphomet, are these characters cherubim, or, to that effect?
Well, Baal is the offspring of El in the Canaanite pantheon, and he is, like Zeus. He is like Osiris, just as Zeus is the offspring god of Kronos and Gaia, and Osiris is the offspring of the Ogdoad gods. And I'm trying to quite remember the one that he's the offspring god of right now, and so is Isis, and they're all depicted as serpents, right? Just as Anki is the offspring of Anu, one of the parent gods in Sumerian, and he's a serpent. So typically Baal would be a serpent god based on his position, right? And he's part of the Baalim. And what's interesting about what's going on in polytheism is they have these parent gods, whether it's the Ogdoad gods or the Tiamat and Abzu and Anu and all these ones in Sumeri, or Kronos and Gaius and Iapetus and all those other ones and the Greek ones, and it's the same all around the world, is they're all overthrown by the offspring gods. And they kill the parent gods, which makes no sense because they're immortal. So I think what's going on here is that you have these offspring gods, whatever they are, whether they're offspring of fallen angels and another fallen angel, or just lower in the ranks because you have that army. I think they rise up after the flood to take power, and you have those parent gods going to the abyss because they're the ones before the flood who created these different kinds of Nephilim. But we also get these different types of Rephaim after the flood. And that's like the Baalim group, right? And in the Ugaritic texts, they associate Baal and his council of gods as creating the Rephaim, but the biggest procreator is Baal. And so they're trying to do fertility rituals to have more Rephaim that are going to be created. And so I think those offspring gods also got hauled off to the abyss, and then more angels sprang up that aren't in the abyss because it's an army. They just keep moving up in rank, right? And so that's how I would classify Baal in sort of the whole mix.
Okay. Jim, your name there says UFO Jim. Has your research into aliens and UFOs, does this line up with what Gary was just saying here?
Yeah, there seems to be, within most of the alien abductions, there's 4 main types that are seen as being the ones in leadership. It starts with the Greys, which seem to be like minor technicians. The next in order would be the reptilian type, which seems to be like the more of the army foot soldiers. Then you have the insectoid, specifically the mantis type.
Yep.
They're the cruelest. They seem to be in charge over everybody else below that I mentioned. And then the Nordics, unlike they seem to, in most generally, seem to be more of manipulating people's minds, building up their egos, telling them that they've been selected for future things, that they're in training now. So most of the experimentation or things, they don't get poked or prodded, up various orifices or anything, but they seem to be the ultimate ones that are in control of everybody, including the mantises.
Well, I'll say this real quick, and then I'll have you go right back into it. I have experienced the abduction phenomenon my entire life until I was saved by Jesus. So what I was, and I don't really remember seeing grays all that often, though I have fuzzy memory of seeing grays. I never saw reptilians, but what I always saw was humans. And I remember distinctly seeing the mantis beings, and they were very much annoyed at humans when they were getting experimented on, and they would scream in pain. They had no tolerance for it, and they would try to stop the humans from screaming because it would hurt their heads.
Yeah, that's pretty consistent with everything that I've ever heard. And probably one of the ways that I got involved in my ability to counsel in this area was that prior to that, I founded one of the first evangelical Christian motorcycle clubs. And of course, with that hedonistic lifestyle, cross addictions, I have, long before I ever got involved in the UFO part, I did a lot of counseling, and I used what's called a theophostic healing, inner healing thing. It's less to do with commanding demons out and more of experiencing inner healing, the opening traumas that first influence this person or traumatize them into any demonic influence. So we address that, and then the rest of the process is none of this long, hours sweat drenching trying to cast demons out. It's rather easy to have them come out once you identified how they got in, why they got in, and then just simply take authority over them. So with that background, it wasn't too hard to transition all of that understanding, realizing it's the same enemy using the same devices, only a different outer veneer. So with that, I was able to help them take, first get healed from the experience. Most of the times I never went back to have them re-experience, the process. Had nothing to do in most cases with them getting delivered. And I didn't really care for going back and having them relive the experience. That I figure if the Lord wants anything to be brought out, it's up to him, and I'll pray with the person to bring out whatever needs to be brought out. The rest of it, we don't have to revisit the trauma and the horror. It was good enough once, we don't need it again. And in that, I've had great successes with helping people. And I don't even, I'm to the point now where I don't even cast them out myself. I have them cast it out themselves. They need to know that they have the authority over these entities that have been tormenting them and messing with their heads for so long. They are able to, and we go by expressions on how did you feel? okay, do you realize this feeling is an entity? Let's address it as an entity. Now you command it out in your own names. And I would walk them through and have them quote scripture. And in most cases, now, if these people weren't Christian, the first most important thing that I would tell them in counseling is, without Christ, I can't help you. I can give you some tools and some understandings, and hopefully, if you don't feel comfortable accepting Christ, then as much as I want to help you, I can't help you, because apart from God's power, I have no power to do anything. So most of them, if they've really been brought to a point of brokenness, they're going to want to listen to anything that they have. And if Jesus loves them, they're open to it. They're open to being healed. Then they themselves can take authority over them. But people that are Christians, and yes, they do get it. Christians do get abducted if they are not understanding that they have authority over them. And a lot of times they don't. But I'm able to share with them that, look, I don't need to do this for you. You have the authority yourself. So you kick them out. Just follow me in prayer, and I'm going to show you how you can do it. And it's so easy, a kid can understand it. So it doesn't have to mean that you have to have all of these, backgrounds. Now I do have some education in counseling, both secular and the courses that I took when I was in Bible college. But I got to say that it's got to be God's anointing to actually enable anything of this to happen. But I personally was abducted by the Nordics, and I had science fiction dreams. I thought, imagine I lived all the way up to about 45 years old until I started seriously investigating the phenomena of alien abduction. I'm going, oh my God, this explains my childhood. This explains my science fiction dreams. It explains, these other, the shadow people that I'd see first before I was taken into a ship. Man, it defined all. You mean, Lord, these weren't dreams, these were real? And yes, it was. So for me, from my own personal experiences, once I found out they were real, there was a time I prayed, Lord, do I know anybody that's ever been abducted? And I imagine the Lord's going, kid, I'm about to tell you. Remember those dreams you had? Remember the nosebleeds you had? Remember, the humming that you had in your ears before you were going to sleep, and you knew you were going to have a science fiction dream that night. So for me, having that experience, I'm not actually thankful that I had them, because I'm now able to listen to people telling me stories time and time again. I don't know how many times this, you're not going to believe this, but no, I will believe it.
Yeah.
I've done it myself,
That's amazing. And Ark is going to say goodbye real quick. Ark, why don't you tell the audience where they can find you?
Yeah, I got to get going, and I really appreciate you having me. It was a great conversation. And you can check out my music at destinylab.com if you guys want to know more. And just really appreciate the invite. And my podcast is on there as well. And then we have lots of music videos on YouTube if you look up Destiny Lab. So just love the talk, and appreciate
thank you
guys.
so much for coming on.
Before you go, I got to tell you something.
Yeah.
There was a time when I was probably only one of maybe 5 people on the earth that understood all this stuff. And I think it was maybe as long as 14, maybe 20 years ago. I don't know if when you first started doing it, I heard some of your music. Man, you were such an uplift to me. I thought, oh my God, there's musicians out there that are singing these truths. How powerful is that? There was a time, guys, when I was so concerned that I was facing some life and death issues health-wise. I had just wrote my book, but I was holding back from publishing it until I had every possible disclaimer. I didn't want somebody reading my book, finding out there's non-human entities mingling with us, and going into a McDonald's and whacking 10 people and saying, I found it in his book. I did not want that to happen. But I hurried up and published it when I realized that, if I died, this stuff isn't going to go any further, and it needs to get out there. So I even have some of it. Most of it's edited, but some of it isn't. So, I didn't have the fine, polished work that I had hoped for, but I put it out there anyway. And now, 20 years later, all of you young guys have taken it to the next level, and I have already surpassed anything I ever thought I could possibly ever do. When I see the knowledge that you guys have as the next generation, I could die tomorrow and be happy, because now I don't have to worry about, just a handful of us know this stuff. You guys have helped not only grasp it, but you're ready to take it to the next level. And thank you for all of you. You know that you've.
Well, thank you for setting blazing the trail for us.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I think, I got a teacher's heart, a pastor's heart. And to me, I think that what better legacy could I leave than to provide a foundation, and it's just taken off all over the place, so
Yeah.
thank you all, really.
Yeah. All right, Ark, and we're
Yeah.
going to be wrapping
Thank
it
you,
up
guys.
here. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. And we're going to be wrapping up here in a moment. I just wanted to say, when you said Christians can still be abducted, yes, they can. And it's the thing, there's a difference between, I'd say I'm not a Christian myself, but I have been saved, and I've been in a period of 10 days of a nirvana-like state, the way Buddhists describe nirvana, a pure bliss for 10 straight days, no drugs needed. And there's a difference between accepting Christ into your life and going to church. And, there's a big difference. So when you accept Christ into your life, he takes away all of your pain. So anyone out there that's struggling with this, that's having these feelings that Jim's describing, maybe have fuzzy memories, or maybe you just, something resonates with you when he was talking about that, turn to Christ. There is a way to stop all that from happening.
Absolutely.
So, this was a fantastic conversation. I'm so glad that we all got to do this. Do you guys want to leave with a parting word and where they can find you? Gary, do you want to start it off?
Sure. And I would also just add a little bit to what you guys were talking about in terms of this alien sort of thing that's going on out there. There's a hierarchy in the creations of the fallen angels as well. And so you guys were describing what, some of them, like the grays, which would be part of the elementals, or the rudiments, as some people, but these are the lowest level. And it's interesting that where that sort of crosses over into the fairy mythos is that you have one group of the ugly ones, which are the gnomes. And there's 3 different groups of elementals. There's actually 4. I'll come back to that in a second. But in the one group that's the gnomes, they were in charge of the technology, the knowledge, and the genealogies of the Nephilim and the knowledge from the gods, and were in charge of that. And there's one group of gnomes, and they're called the Greys. And in Scotland, they're called the Grey Nembers, and they come through portals, fairy mounds with flying machines, and they kidnap people, and they do sexual experimentation, all sorts of things. Mm-hmm. And I put a few descriptions of it in my book. And if you didn't know it was an alien abduction, you'd swear it was a gray abduction, because they look just like them. And you also have the salamanders, which is the 4th group of elementals, which are taller than the little people, because these are smaller ones, and they are reptilian in nature. And then you also have a group that's called the white elves in the hierarchy. And they're not quite Nephilim, but they're like very pale skinned, elfish kind of beings. And they're kind of depicted in the Lord of the Rings as the sort of the larger elf ones that are of royalty, as opposed to a little one being like a hobbit or something, or dwarf. That's, dwarf was assigned to make weapons for the Nephilim and the gods, and they lived in the earth. And they all have a specific role in the hierarchy. But the salamanders and the white ones that grew up, the mantis ones, I'm not all that familiar with. But there's also these other beings, like these scorpion beings that come out of Revelation 9. These are, as you go into Sumerian mythology, were created by the gods and they had the capability to destroy the earth. And they were to keep the offspring gods in check, so they wouldn't overthrow them or kill them. But of course they did. And the scorpion gods were created by Tiamat, which is a Leviathan type female Leviathan, just as the female Leviathan was killed in the Bible. And they also protected the gates to the underworld, where the abyss is located, and the sun temples. And their description is exactly like what comes out of the abyss. So what my point is on the physical aspect within the rebellious hierarchy, there's a hierarchy there as well.
Wow, you just like tied everything together right there. I mean, that was phenomenal. Do you want to tell the audience where they can find all your stuff?
Yes, the best way to find my stuff is on Facebook under Gary Wayne. On a timeline, I have a couple Genesis 6 conspiracy pages. There's also Genesis 6 conspiracy group. I also have, you can get a hold of me through Messenger if you want to ask me a question, get some documents, whatever, or post on my timeline. You can also go to my website, the Genesis6conspiracy.com, www.genesis6conspiracy.com. And when you go to the website, you can get a generous excerpt of all 98 chapters. So you can get a good feel for whether or not it's a book for you or not. And I think most people kind of get taken away with the table of contents, just the names of the chapters. So it covers a lot of material, and it's loaded with information all the way through the book. And you can also get a signed copy if you wanted a signed copy from the website from me. Just click on the buy now, go over to buy a signed copy, or you can click over to Amazon to get Kindle edition, or to Amazon.com to buy from them, or to BarnesandNoble.com. So lots of ways to get a hold of my book. If you wanted the book and wanted to support your local bookstore, it's distributed by Bookmasters, so they can order it in, and Bookmasters is in Pennsylvania. So lots of ways to get a hold of me, lots of ways to get a hold of my book. So do I have documents on things like the scorpion beings? Yes. Do I have the documents? I have a 3-part series on the dogmen. I have a 3-part series on the Jesuits. I have lots of documents. If you name that, if you want more information on something, name the topic when you get a hold of me, and I will send you the document, and you're not charged for that.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. And one last thing I wanted to say before I go on to Jason is that the scorpion beings are depicted in the never-ending story, and you have to go through the gate, and they shoot some kind of lightning out of their tails if you don't pass. So they're protecting the offspring gods, as you were just saying. That's amazing.
And gatekeepers.
Yeah, definitely gatekeepers. I never heard of the scorpion beings, so that just that triggers some new research for me to look into.
They're called the Akrababalu or the Gerdabalu. And what's interesting is the first word, a crab, because the Semitic languages are kind of similar. That's the Hebrew word for scorpion.
Okay, wow, very interesting. Jason, do you have any final words for
Yeah,
our
just thanks
audience?
for everything, man. God bless everybody. Thank you for having me on. And I'm, like my brother said, we're on Josh Monday's Christian Conspiracy podcast. And yeah, well, thank you. God bless you. And I gotta get out of here too, man. You guys, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Gary, and thank you. I can't remember.
Todd.
That was it.
Yeah.
I see your name on there, but it says Great Chakra.
Yeah, I know. I forgot to change it for you guys.
I call you the GCA.
All right,
Todd, thank you, man.
Thank you so much for coming on. Yeah, I
Thank
really
you,
appreciate it.
You guys have a good night. Be safe.
All right, you as well. And Jim, do you have any final words for our audience and want to tell them where they can find you?
You can go to echoesofenoch.com and you can pick up my book there. $15. Just send it, through PayPal. It's the easiest, quickest way to be able to get it. You can buy one off of Amazon, but you're going to pay like $25, and I get like $4 from the book. So I got my own republished, and it's a better deal. Unless you live outside of the United States, then it's ridiculous. You can buy mine for $15 and it costs me $25 to send it to you. So you get a better deal from Amazon. But it's simple. It's just ECHOES. Yeah, simple. No, I can't do it. ECHOES OFENOCH ministries.com. And you can go to my website or under my name, Jim Wilhelmson, on Facebook. I was one of the first ones to be removed from, I lost 139 videos on YouTube. I was one of the first ones to be kicked off for hate speech. I was picking on Hitler, saying too much about him, and they thought it was kind of mean of me to pick on the guy. So ridiculous. So I went through all of their things and I couldn't get back on. So I'm no longer on there. So the best way to get a hold of me on a personal level is to go to my Facebook page. I can give you any information, documentation, anything that you would like further through the instant message. Other than that, I would just like to say that, I'm thankful for being on here, and that if you are suffering any kind of post-traumatic syndromes or anything, questioning about abductions, please get a hold of me. I can guarantee you total termination of whatever you're going through. It's not hard. It's not, it doesn't have to be scary. It can be a process that will set you free. And that's why I'm here, and I make myself available. That's the top priority for everything, is that I want to make an impact on people. So with that, that's pretty much all I got to say. I would like to pray, Lord. Right now, I just ask that if at the hearing of these things, that if there's anybody that is in need, that I can get a hold of them and be able to be a faithful servant and help them out in any way that I can, Lord. I just thank you and praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. All right, gentlemen, and anybody that's listening, you guys can find me, my website, ImmanuelKingman.com. And of course, I'm going to do my best to get all the links in the description that were discussed here. I want to thank you guys for coming on. I mean, you guys have really helped me in my process of awakening. From 2 years ago, I was dead asleep in Christ, and now I am searching for Christ and filled with Christ every moment of every day. And, I wouldn't be where I am without the two of you, starting me on this path. I learned of both of you from the Confessionals podcast with Tony Merkel. So, the oddest places is where God reaches us, right?
Amen.
Amen. All right, everybody.